Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was betrayed by his family and abandoned Konoha? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The sun peeked through the shades of Naruto's room, the rays settling on his face. Naruto tried to keep his eyes closed, but it was all for naught, as he reluctantly left his peaceful slumber. He pushed himself up and surveyed his surroundings. He was in a small apartment, complete with a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and bath. The coloring was modest and even, and the tables and chairs did not have a speck of dust on them. Naruto moved his focus to a small nightstand. 6:30, Naruto thought as he groggily rose from bed, 2 whole hours until the academy starts. Seeing that he was not going back to sleep anytime soon, Naruto rose from his bed, and stumbled into the bathroom. He had just set the shower to the perfect temperature, and was about to step in, when he heard the heavy snores coming from inside his head. Prankster side kicking in, Naruto blasted the water temperature to the coldest it could go. Bracing himself, he entered the spray of icy water. Cold, Kyuubi screamed, woken from his slumber by the feeling of ice-cold water all over his body. Naruto gave a tired chuckle, then quickly returned the water to its previous temp, to enjoy his shower. "You," said Kyuubi, clearly not happy about the manner in which he had woken up. "I'm not apologizing," thought Naruto back to the fox, "that was the most fun I have had in a while. I will get revenge, starting now," said Kyuubi as he started to send an image of when Naruto had caught Raki and an scored together. The thought of a Raki instantly widened Naruto's eyes in horror. "My eyes. Oh dear Kami, my eyes are burning," he screamed, covering his face with his hands. Kyuubi laughed at his container's reaction. "Just remember, you deserved that one." When Naruto had recovered, he proceeded to wonder about his first day at the academy. From the people he had met so far, Samui and Omoi seemed to be trustworthy people, and good shinobi in training. However, their opinions on his other classmates were interesting to say the least, especially the 2 apprentices in Jinchuriki. Raki had never said that much about his teammates. Whenever the question was brought up, he would ignore it, bring up a new subject, or, if he had any, throw some sharp kunai at Naruto. Naruto had learned very quickly that this was a sore subject for him. The only thing he had been able to learn about them was that Takashi was a golden, and that Chiasso was a beautiful brute, but other than that, Raki was silent about them. Naruto respected his choice to not want to talk about them, just like Raki respected Naruto's wish to not talk about his life in Konoha. Naruto's eyes dimmed a bit. He had tried to keep all thoughts of Konoha out of his head, excluding Jiji and the Ichirakus of course. When it came to the villagers, Naruto felt irritated. Not angry or filled with rage, just irritated, like it was a small bug that would never leave you alone. Naruto knew that his heritage did not come from Konoha. He was an Uzumaki, a survivor of a once powerful clan. A clan so powerful that it had its own hidden village, Uzushiogakure, best known for their Fuin Jutsu skills and their notoriously long lives. Though Naruto knew of his clan's ties to Konoha, he had long since decided that was his pa-ti, and that Kumo was his future. Naruto soon was snapped out of his train of thought when he realized that he had been in the shower for close to 45 minutes. He turned off the water and began to start his daily routine. When Naruto had exited the bathroom, he quickly made some instant ramen and did some stretches while waiting. When the ramen was done, Naruto wolfed it down, and then proceeded to make 3 more cups, which were eaten at similar speeds. As Naruto was about to leave his room, he noticed a small letter on the counter. He went over to examine it, only to find the word "Kit" written on it. Curious, Naruto opened the letter to see why his master had written him, other than just coming to talk. "Kit, sorry I can't do this personally, but if the villagers found out that I was teaching you, they would go ballistic. If you haven't already found out, the council, in all its glory, tried to push an apprentice on me a couple of years ago. The choices I had were shitty to none, so I hightailed it out of there. I eventually met you and took you under my wing, but people will not take kindly to a kid from another village being the apprentice to one of the senin. So, here on out, I need you to continue training whenever you can. Just do your warm-ups and try to master some of the simpler jutsus you know without hand signs. I don't really care what you do in the academy, but for Kami's sakes, make some friends. You really need to know people your own age group. And who knows, you might even find a stunning young girl to play With. Raki drew himself, giving a pervy grin. The same rules apply from what I told you yesterday, and only summon if you need to. Yane. Raki. P.S. You need to come meet the Rakage when classes are over. P.P.S. Don't prank your teacher too badly, we need them, sort of. P.P.P.S. The store to the right of the inn you are staying at serves the best tea in the mornings. Naruto sighed and burned the note with a simple Kaden jutsu. I have a feeling this is going to be a boring year, he thought to himself as he locked the door to his room and walked off to find the store Raki had told him about. Yugito gave a loud yawn, so tired. She whined as she moved to lay on a row of desks. Samui sighed. I bet you are, after you spent all night trying to break into Naoki's house for one of your revenge pranks. Why did you even try when you know that his clan's compound is one of the most secure in the village? Yugito, Samui, Omoi and Karui were sitting around a row of desks in the upper right corner of the class near the window. Omoi and Samui wore the same clothes they did the day before. Yugito had fair skin, long, braided blonde hair, like Samui's, and a pair of cat-like, black eyes. She had small cups that were concealed under a short-sleeved purple and black blouse. She had on black ninja pants with cloud outlines on the bottom and purple fingerless gloves. Her arms were covered with ninja tape and also a red belt around her waist. Karui had dark skin with red hair and amber eyes and yellow earrings and a white bandana that kept her hair down. She wore a similar uniform to Samui, but hers had frills on the neck and she had thigh-high boots. We got past the first wall, protested Karui, as she struggled to keep her head up. If Cat Eyes here didn't attract the smell of the guard dogs, that bastard would have woken up completely hairless. Yugito shot Karui a quick glare before turning back to Samui. Though it's not like you would ever see the shit he does, she said in an irritated tone. That jerk wouldn't harm a fly if Samui was there to watch him. Samui had been the apple of Naoki's affection since the second year of the academy. She was one of the most level-headed girls in the class, and also not one of his many fangirls. It seemed that Naoki liked a challenge. Yugito was actually a bit jealous of Samui in that aspect. Sure, Samui had always turned down any date thrown at her, but at least she was getting asked. No one wanted to even come close to Yugito because of her Jinchuriki status, and those who did only wanted to be the first to claim the demon bit. Ah, cheer up kitten, said Nibby, the two-tailed beast, there must be a man out there who will look past what you are. And if not, having mind-blowing with anyone you want is not a sad lifestyle. I remember when I got with these four. Nibby, interrupted Yugito, as she tried to make the blush on her face recede. She looked at her friends and noticed that Samui seemed to be searching for someone. Who are you looking for? Yugito asked. Samui stiffened. No one, she curtly responded. She is probably looking for Naruto. Omoi had started to say but was cut off when Samui hit him over the head. This piqued Yugito's interests even further. Who's Naruto? Omoi rubbed the new lump on his head. He is a kid we met while you two were trying to prank Naoki. He said he was joining the academy today. Yugito and Karui looked over at Samui, who was glaring at Omoi. They both got a teasing grin on their faces. Oh, does Samui have a crush on the new kid? Yugito said with a grin. I think so, and I thought she just shot everyone else down because she played for the other team, added Karui with a GI. GGLE. Samui looked away and pointed her nose high with a snort, but a light blush was present. I do not have a crush on Naruto-san. Omoi, who had popped another sucker into his mouth, had a puzzled expression on his face. Then why did you blush when you saw Naruto without his mask? This time Omoi had to dodge a couple of kunai that skimmed the top of his hair. Yugito and Karui wore gob-smacked expressions. Are you serious? Yugito finally asked. Are we talking about the same person here or am I losing my hearing? Cause I think you just said Samui blushed at a boy. Omoi nodded. I was as surprised as you. This got Yugito thinking. Hey Nibby, why don't we get that mask off of the Naruto kid so we can see what your stoic friend saw? Absolutely kitten. I am so glad my devious side had rubbed off on you, said Nibby, who was giving her container a cat-like gr. Just as Yugito started to plan mission, unmask Samui's crush, Osamu-sensei walked in to begin the lesson. About an hour into the lecture, Yugito had almost fallen asleep when the class heard a knock at the door. Osamu paused, and walked to open the door. Standing there was Naruto wearing his mask, rubbing the back of his sheepishly, while holding a cup of tea. I'm late, right? He asked. Osamu was perplexed. Yes, you must be the new student starting today. What were you doing that made you an entire hour late? Naruto just raised up the cup of tea. It's really good, I had to get a couple of cups. A few of the class giggled and Osamu gave an annoyed sigh. Alright, well, let's hope that this does not become a daily occurrence. Go and introduce yourself to the class. Naruto nodded, then walked up to the center of the room. Hey, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and this tea. He took a sip. How is this so good? He asked himself. Lots of the students got a large teardrop on their foreheads. Is he really that stupid? Most of the class asked themselves. Only Samui and Omoi knew that he was masking his true strength, while Yugito made a note to find out where he got the tea. Very well, Naruto. Go sit next to Omoi. Naruto nodded and moved up the stairs and took his place by Omoi, who he greeted with a fist bump. Yugito was currently observing the new student. He looks good from here, kitten, said Nibi. Nice bright, shining eyes. Samui likes him, so you know he is strong. Osamu-sensei had taken a seat at his desk, only to stand up later with the seat glued to his rear, making the class to laugh, and a prankster to boot. Oh, I just know you are made for each other, kitten. Why don't you ditch class so you can take him to your room to ride his, Nibi? Screamed Yugito at her demon, using all of her willpower to keep a blush down. After Osamu, with the help of some students, gotten the seat off of his pants, continued his lecture from where it had been interrupted. Hitch both Naruto and Yugito slept through. The bell finally rang, signifying the break. As the class entered the school grounds, which was covered with dirt except for some trees near the corners of the buildings, Naruto went off to find Samui and Omoi. He finally found them along with a red head and another blonde, relaxing around an enclave of rocks. He walked up and smiled under his mask, as he waved to Samui. Yugito was sitting on top of one of the rocks and Samui, Karui and Omoi were leaning against some of the smaller rocks. Hello, Naruto-san. Samui was the first to acknowledge his presence. He gave her an eye smile. Hello, Sammy-chan, how have you been? Yugito snickered at Samui's nickname while Samui was slightly glaring at Naruto. When did I give you permission to call me that? She less asked, more demanded. Naruto just kept eye smiling at her. 1. You gave me the nickname, Naruto-san, when I asked you to call me Naruto, so I am just giving you a nickname in return. 2. Sammy-chan, is just so easy to say, and 3. The face to make is adorable when I call you it. Samui was about to throw one of the rocks at him when she heard the first 2 reasons, but when she heard the third, she went wide-eyed and a small blush appeared on her face. She tried to come up with a retort, but her brain had shut down for a bit, so all she did was stand there. Yugito was watching the scene play out and decided to make her presence known. Now that is impressive, she said as she hopped off the boulder, getting Samui to blush once is an accomplishment. Twice as legendary. Naruto tilted his head slightly in confusion. Both Yugito and Samui had to hold in a scream of kawaii, but Nibi didn't. Kawaii, that is adorable. Grab him, kitten, before your friend notices he is gone. Yugito ignored Nibi for the moment and put out her hand. I'm Yugito, the redhead is Karui, who nodded at Naruto, and I am guessing you already know Omoi and Sammy-chan. She had purposely put Samui's new nickname in for her own enjoyment as the other blonde girl, now recovered, shot her a deet. HLY glare. Naruto smiled at her and grasped her hand in a shake. Uzumaki Naruto, but just call me Naruto. Yugito smiled. What's with the mask? She asked. Got something you need to hide under there? Naruto's eyes seemed to twinkle with mischief. I'll tell you what I told Omoi and Samui. It's for personal protection. Yugito gave him the puppy, or in her case, kitty cat eyes. They seemed to glow with sadness, but Samui and Omoi both got to see, she said in a cute voice. Naruto was having trouble focusing on anything else but her eyes. She looks so sad, he thought, as his hand twitched towards his mask. Don't do it, Kit, yelled Kyuubi. I am sure this is Nibi now. If you let her get to you, soon everything you hold near and dear will be hers for the taking. I made the same mistake that you are about to make, so please, for love of Kami, resist. Kyuubi's rant seemed to snap Naruto out of the trance and just shook his head. I am sorry, Yugito-san, but they used it as payment for telling me about the academy. I can not show you. Good, Kit. Good. Now just keep it up, urged the Kyuubi. Yugito's eyes began to slightly water, causing Naruto's resolve to weaken. No, don't cry, yet. I cannot show you yet, he quickly said, not wanting to make the girl cry. It was one of his weaknesses. You're fucking hopeless, sighed the Kyuubi from his cage. Yugito's expression changed instantly, from brink of tears, to wildly grinning. Great, so when is, yet? She asked. Thinking quickly, Naruto began to do what any great man would do when caught in a position like this, tell half the truth. Well, you see, if people knew my true identity, it could cause a lot of unwanted problems. So I need to be sure only a select few know, he said. It was not like he was lying. If Konoha did find out he was alive, and in Kumo, they would with no doubt send an army to capture or kill him. Nice save, kid, said Kyuubi. Really? No, I was being sarcastic. Even though Yugito was smiling on the outside, she was irked on the inside. Why didn't that work? She thought, I have used that move on Karabi-sensei and Aoji hundreds of times, and it has worked perfectly. I don't know what happened, kitten, added Nibi. I have used my technique for much greater things than that. Either he has heard of it before, which I find hard to believe, or what he says is true, that this is very important. But that only makes me want to know more. After Yugito finished scheming with Nibi, she continued to act as if nothing was wrong. Oh, you are so easy. She got in close. Having you around is going to be fun, and also you can Samui blush, which is a bonus. Naruto slowly nodded, still a bit confused about some of what Yugito had said. What does she mean, making Sammy-chan blush? He thought. In his cage, Kyuubi banged his head against the bars, cursing Kami for giving him such an oblivious container. Anyway, said Samui, who was still a bit pissed about the Sammy-chan comment, what do you think of the class Naruto? It's really nice, Sammy-chan, electing a smirk from Yugito and a scowl from Samui. The students seem fine if you don't mess with them. The teacher is smart but gullible, meaning lots of fun pranks in the future, and he doesn't seem to care if I come in late. He was about to continue, but a rock flew past his face, skimming the cloth of his mask. The group turned to see two figures, one boy and one girl, standing a few feet away. The boy had light-toned skin, with messy brown hair, and dull brown eyes. He wore a miniature Kumo Anbu get-up, with the only exception being that all of the armor had the faintest color of red. The girl was, in Naruto's opinion, quite beautiful. She had captivating red eyes, black hair that reached down her back, and a small deceptive smile. Her outfit consisted of white shinobi-style pants, a sleeveless crimson tank top, with one tan shawl moving across her waist, and on her left arm was a fishnet glove. As soon as the two arrived, the mood instantly changed. Samui gave them a slight glare, Omoi had moved into a fighting stance, and Karui and Yugito were growling and looking like they were about to tear the kids to shreds. The two sides did not move or speak a word for 2 whole minutes, so Naruto decided to break the tension. You know, it is appropriate to know the names of the people throwing rocks at you, he said with an eyes smile. The girl gave a smirk. Well, how thoughtful, and here I thought that you had no class for hanging out around them. My name is Sango Yuriko, apprentice of the Neko Sennin, and my handsome friend here is Minoru Naoki, apprentice of the Ukami Sennin, who just gave a bored stare at the blonde boy. Naruto gave a small wave. Uzumaki Naruto, so what are you two doing? Probably Yuriko Shofu been following Naoki Tem with hopes of pencil asking her out, yelled Yugito. Yuriko scowled but then quickly brought it back to a smirk. On Neko no Mi, trying to keep your new friend. As soon as he finds out what you are, he will leave, like all the rest. Yugito flinched, but stood her ground. Yuriko turned back to Naruto. Do you know Naruto-kun? Your little friend here is the Nibi no Nekomata, a giant, fire-breathing cat who is bent on death and destruction. Why hang out with Neko no Mi and her low-class friends, when you can be with normal people like us? Naruto turned to look at Yugito, who flinched under his gaze. Karui, Samui, and Omoi all waited for his answer, but he just kept observing Yugito. After 2 minutes, he looked back. She doesn't look like a cat. Yugito breathed a sigh of relief, and Nibi smiled. See, kitten, I told you there were people out there who could see the truth. And another good thing is that he is not bad looking either. Samui, Omoi, and Karui, seeing that Naruto was not a threat to their friend, moved their gaze back to Yuriko and Naoki, who looked surprised to say the least. The only thing that looks cat-like one Yugito are her eyes, and they look pretty cute, Naruto continued, causing Yugito to blush. And above all, he said as he narrowed his eyes, if you say she is the Nibi, you must not be very smart. When we seal a kunai into a scroll, does the scroll become a kunai? No, it does not, meaning that Yugito is the container rather than the beast. Yuriko, who had recovered, was glaring at the blonde, Fine, all we do is try to help you and set you on the right path, but if you want to ignore our advice then go right ahead. Come one Naoki-kun. She started to walk away but noticed that Naoki wasn't following her. He just moved his gaze to Samui. You haven't accepted my invitation for a date, Samui-san, he said in a bland voice, betraying no emotion. Samui just replied with an equally bland tone, I am sorry, Naoki-san, but I must decline your request. Why? He asked, raising his eyebrow. My clan in one of the only clans our village processes, many would be honored to find a way into our clan, and when I am here offering you a way in, you decline. I said no, Naoki, she said again, even though this one was a bit louder. Naoki half scowled, half glared, again why? You do know of my clan's control, and being a clan heir, I could protect you and your friends from any problems. Naruto, deciding that he had enough, said in a light tone, you know flowers and chocolate work a lot better than threats. Naoki turned to glare at Naruto, and for a moment his own killer intent laced it. I do not believe I asked for your opinion, Naruto-san, he said blandly. Naruto shrugged, and I believe I heard Sammy-chan say no, so I guess both of us are in the wrong. Naoki's eyes widened a bit at the Sammy-chan comment, but then quickly regained his composure. I see. Well, I must be off, but I will enjoy sparring with you in the future, Naruto-san, he said, and began to walk away, in the other direction as Yuriko, who ran to catch up with her true love. After the duo had left, Karui started to laugh. Did you see that bastard's face? I swear I have never seen him show that much emotion in my life. Omoi popped another sucker in his mouth. Why did he leave so quickly? Maybe he is going because it hurts his face to change expressions so much. Or maybe he is out plotting his revenge. Or maybe he did not get to finish because Karui had brought her fist down on his head. Shut up, Omoi Baka. Just be happy we won this one. Naruto smiled at his new friends. Perhaps this won't be such a boring year, he thought to himself. He was brought back to reality by Yugito shaking his shoulder. Thanks, she said as she watched Omoi and Karui fight, while Samui just shook her head, for standing up for us. Most people as soon as they hear of one of the Biju would have just walked away. But you didn't, I like that. Naruto gave an eye smile to Yugito, think nothing of it, besides they are not out of the woods yet. Yugito gave him a curious look. What do you mean? She asked. Naruto's eyes sparkled with mischief as he scribbled an address on a stray piece of paper before giving it to her. Well, that could mean a lot of things, but I will need your help. Just meet me at this place at 8 p.m. If I am going to get those two, I will need your help to do it. Naruto turned and started to walk away. Later, Yugi-chan. Yugito smiled with a light blush tinting her cheeks. Later, Naruto-kun, she said. Inside her seal, Nibi was watching the boy walk away. Nice, I have an idea. How about you follow him, and when he gets near one of the closets, push him and yourself in so you can suck on his Nibi. Single quote. It was an hour after school and Naruto was standing in front of two large, dark-toned muscular men, and Raki in the Raikage's office. The man at the desk had white combed-back hair and wore the Raikage hat on his head. He wore a golden belt and had a stern gaze. The other man also had white hair and a goatee. He had on a white forehead protector with the Kumo symbol, along with a pair of black shades. He had on a Jonin flak jacket and a red rope around his waist, with 7 swords strapped to his back. So you must be the boy from Konoha. Naruto was it. The man at the desk started. My name is A, but you can just call me Raikage-sama, either one will do. I don't care, never been one for formalities. Naruto gave a small smile under his mask. He liked this guy already. Then pointed to the man on his left. This is Kurabi, the Jinchuriki of Hachibi, and from now on, your sensei in controlling the Kyuubi's chakra. Kurabi gave Naruto a grin and held out his fist. How you doin', little nine? We go and make it so you can use the 9 tails just fine, yeah. Both Raki and Kurabi got large sweat drops on their heads and Naruto gave a nervous chuckle. Kid, if you ever start doing that, I don't care if I die, I will kill you. Regaining his composure, Naruto responded to his fist bump. Sounds fine, Kurabi-sensei, when do we start? Meet me at 10 at the hills, but you better be ready to pay the bills. He then disappeared in a puff of smoke. There was silence for a bit, before Naruto yelled, does anyone know what he just said? Raki just shrugged. Don't look at me, I haven't heard that man rap for years, I am out of practice. Both looked at Ahu's side. He wants you to meet him at 10 tomorrow on the outskirts of the city. Raki and Naruto nodded in understanding as a continued. Also, it is very important that your status as a Jinchuriki stays hidden, Naruto. That is why I am placing it as an S-ranked military secret. Not even the council or any of the other Sennin will know besides Raki, Kurabi, and myself. That's right, Kit. And I know you are just dying to tell everyone how you are the apprentice of such a handsome, stunning, and thoughtful man such as me, but you must resist, said Raki, putting his arm around Naruto's shoulder. Naruto pushed the arm off. I don't really think I want the women of Kumo relating me to you, Ero Masuda. Raki face faulted and pounded his desk in laughter. Ha ha ha, now that is a name that fits my student. Raki looked glumly at the floor before a brilliant idea popped into his head. He gave a devilish fox grin at A, who had stopped laughing when he saw it. That grin always meant trouble. Well, I did learn it all from you now, sensei, he began, getting his student's attention. Remember Makoto sensei? Eureka-san. Them and the hundreds more you peeked on. I am surprised I am not any worse. I was confused. What could Raki have to gain by saying all this? His questions were answered when Naruto was walking out the door. Alright, you guys take care of that. Later, Ero Masuda. Later, Ero Densetsu. I threw a chair at Naruto, but he was already out the door. Raki was now the one laughing. Sucks for you, sensei. As soon as he gives you a name, you're labeled for life. I swung a punch at Raki, who used a kawairimi with a chair, which was destroyed. After a calm down, he asked Raki, so before our little distraction, I was going to remind Naruto-san to stay out of trouble. Do you think that will happen? Raki stopped laughing, thought for a moment before responding in a blank voice. Enjoy how small the paperwork is with Yugito, before his shunshined away. Aside, this year is going to be very troublesome, he thought, but with the benefits, I would be a fool not to take it. Early in the morning, screams could be heard throughout Kumogakure. The entire Minoru compound was painted a mix of bright orange and purple. Nothing was spared. The walls, the roofs, even the furniture, everything inside and outside the compound was either orange or purple. This was not as bad compared to the situations of Yuriko and Naoki. Both were tied to a pole in the center of the village plaza. On Naoki, the word, Tem, was written on every visible part of his body, with the same being for Yuriko, except it was, Shofu, with a 2 every once in a while. On a small cliff, overwatching the entire spectacle, were Yugito and Naruto, sitting on a small bench. Yugito had a pack of sushi and Naruto a bowl of ramen, which they were eating with large grins. I have to say, Yugito said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth, when you first told me of your idea, I was considering taking you to the ward. Naruto shot her a masked grin. Yes, but if you hadn't come along, you wouldn't have been able to see this masterpiece, he said as he spread his arms to the mass destruction that they had caused. How did you get past the dogs? Asked Yugito. Most of the time, if they even smell me, they go ballistic. Naruto just reached into his pouch and pulled out a small bone that he tossed to Yugito. Take a sniff, he said as he got back to eating his ramen. Yugito smelled the bone before confusion spread across her face. Bacon? She asked incredulously. Naruto just waved it off as he finished his ramen. When he was done, he nodded. Never like to hurt animals, so I just reward them with something so I can just get on with whatever I'm doing. Yugito nodded and made a mental note to get some of the bones for the future. So why did you need me? She asked. I'm pretty sure you could have done this on your own, so why did you want my help? Naruto stopped and looked at Yugito. 1. He held up a finger. I knew you wanted to get back at them as well. 2. More hands equal next work. And 3. I didn't really know where they lived, he finished with a smaller voice. Yugito gave a slight glare at the boy. So I was just free labor for you, is that it? She asked, intensifying her glare, making Naruto sweat a bit. No, he said in mock surrender, those were just some of the reasons I needed you here, but I brought you along because I like your company. Yugito's glare ceased that instant and she started to lightly blush. Oh look, kitten, he likes your company, why don't you him to your room to make him appreciate it even more, tempted Nibi. But Yugito did not want to ruin this moment, so she cut off her connection with her Biju. Thanks, she said, with a little blush present. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he was in the clear, before he gave a chuckle. No probable, Yugito. Naruto. The duo turned to see a fuming Raikage staring straight at them. I think this is a good time to run, said Yugito, to which Naruto quickly nodded. They then jumped down the cliff and ran with the Raikage close behind. The morning was peaceful in Kumo. The sun was rising majestically from the far-off mountains, the citizens were just opening their shops in Naru. Tu was sleeping peacefully in his bed, without a care in the wake up. Naruto was flipped out of his mattress and flung at the wall. Senses wide awake, he frantically searched the room for his attacker, only to come across Yugito with a displeased look on her face. Damn, you wore your mask to sleep, she said as she placed her hands on her hips and looked at the ground, and when you hit the wall, it didn't fall off. She then shrugged it off and replaced her previous expression with a happier one. Well, there is always tomorrow. I'll be making me some breakfast, she finished with glee, and walked out. As soon as she left, Naruto let out a heavy sigh. Ever since she learned that they were basically neighbors, and that they both lived alone, she would every so often break into his apartment and surprise him, whether it was with a new prank idea, or another attempt to see what he looked like under his mask. Naruto stumbled to the shower and let the warm water wash away the memory of his previous wake-up call. He had been in Kumo for about a year, and had accomplished a total of 2 things. The first was in his training with Kurabi, when he had managed to master up to his two-tailed state, before he went berserk. That had ruined a great deal of training grounds, Naruto thought to himself as he recounted the angry face of the Raikage after the 6th field had been destroyed. The second thing that he had done while here was create some strong bonds with his friends and classmates. Excluding 2, of course, he added in as he thought of Naoki and Yuriko, who had never really forgiven him for writing Tem and Shofu all over them. But he wasn't complaining, that was one of the funniest things he had done in a while. Naruto was on a lot better terms with the rest of the class though, they enjoyed at his pranks, but knew that he was reliable when they needed it, especially when he had gotten a hold of the answer key for the semester test. Some of the girls had even started a club to see what he looked like under his mask, to which Yugito said, "There is no way in hell they are seeing it before me." But the people Naruto mainly hung out with were Yugito, Samui, Omoi, Karui, and Aya. He and Omoi would normally spar with each other. But for some reason, during some of their spars Naruto felt like he was being watched. It felt creepy. With Aya he had officially gotten banned from the kitchen, because of an incident when he had tried to combine all of the different ramen flavors in one magnificent bowl. To make a long story short, it exploded. Guess that means that man was not meant to have something that delicious. He and Kyuubi were in a small depression for about a week. Karui and Samui would normally relax with Naruto when they could. Karui's family owned a clothing store, so she worked there half-time, and since Samui needed the cash, she helped out when she could. But when they were off work, they would spend most of their time at the training grounds or someone's house, generally Naruto's because no one else could interrupt. Naruto and Yugito were the new pranksters of the village. People even called them Orenji to Murasaki no Kyofu, for how both orange and purple seemed to play a big part in their conjoined pranks. Naruto probably hung out with Yugito more than the rest, partly because she lived so close, and also how much they could relate. Yugito had confided in Naruto that when she was little she did have a mother, but she was always sick, and died when she was about 5. She was then moved to Kumo and taken under the care of Kurabi and A. After Yugito was finished, Naruto decided to tell her a modified version of his life. He told her of how he was an orphan from birth, and that the villagers did not like him very much. He left out most of the worst beatings and then told her how a man helped him escape, taught him some ninjutsu, the N came to Kumo. When he was done, Yugito had tears of understanding in her eyes and hugged Naruto for close to half an hour. After Naruto was done with his shower, he got dressed and entered the kitchen to see Yugito eating a pack of sushi. Naruto nodded to her and moved to grab 5 cups of instant ramen. Yugito sighed at her fellow blonde, "You know it is not healthy to just eat ramen morning, noon, and night. You need a more balanced diet," she said as she popped a sushi roll into her mouth. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "This is a balanced diet," he said as he showed her one of the cups. "This one has vegetables in it." Yugito knocked the cup away from her. "That's not good enough," she said as she took another bite of her sushi. "You need to eat more variety." Naruto just rolled his eyes. "This from the girl who can eat over 4 pounds of sushi in a day," he added in a sarcastically. Yugito pouted. "Fish is good for you," she said, making Naruto laugh. "Not if it is the only thing you eat," he laughed. Yugito just stuck her tongue out at him and went back to her meal. Both ate in a pleasant silence for a bit, until Yugito asked, "Who do you think is going to be on your team?" Naruto stopped eating and adopted a quizzical expression. I don't really know, he said as he looked at his ramen. I was in the middle of the class, so I could be paired up with anyone, perhaps. Omoi and Karui's families have been paired together before, so they will be on the same team, but as for you, Samui, and me, I am stumped. Yugito looked down a bit. What if they see me as the demon bitch? She asked in a small voice. Naruto grabbed Yugito's chin and forced her to look him in the eye. Then I will find them, shave off all of the hair on their bodies, and hang them upside down, from the Raikage's tower, he said with a comforting voice. Yugito giggled at the threat, and smiled back. Thanks, Naruto, she said as she got up from the table. Come on, let's go and find out our teams, she said, then turned around with a smirk. I want to see your face when you get paired with one of your fangirls. She ran out of the room with Naruto in a panicked state. That is not funny. He yelled after her, only praying that she was wrong, and no fangirls would be placed on his team. They both arrived a few minutes before class was going to start, and grabbed some seats near Samui, Karui, and Omoi. Did it work? Karui asked Yugito, who shook her head in defeat. Karui kicked her desk. Damn it. We have to try something else. Have you tried getting it off while he is sleeping? She asked. Yugito went into a thinking pose. No, I don't think that would work. We have to do it when he is awakened. He is not suspecting anything, she said. Naruto's sweat dropped from the conversation. Don't you think it might be a good idea to not plot right in front of me? He offered. Both girls looked at him, then each other, and nodded, planning on picking up the conversation later. Yugito then turned to Samui. Come on, Samui-chan. You have seen his face. Just tell us a small detail. Hell, even a vague one, please. She begged. Samui just looked away. No, I promised Naruto I would not tell, she said sternly. Yugito pouted. Fine, just take your boyfriend's side, she said. Samui gave her a light bop on the head, but if you looked closely, you could see a faint blush. Just then Osamu walked into the class. All right, sit down and shut up, he yelled to silence the class. When he thought he had everyone's attention, he began his speech. Today you start your lives as part of the shinobi force of Kumo. You will be separated into teams depending on your specialties, and then those teams will be given a primary goal, such as information gathering, tracking, capture, alt and so on. Though you will be focusing on honing your skills in whatever job type you have been selected for, you will be expected to have proficient fighting skills for when you need them. The higher up jobs are mostly assassinations, so you better get used to killing. Osamu then picked up a clipboard from his desk. Team 12, that focuses on information gathering, is made up of Akihiko Fumio, Masuyo Yumi, and Susumu Ken. You will meet your sensei at Training Ground 4. Naruto tuned out for most of the teams, waiting for his name to be called. Samui, Omoi, and Karui were put on an assault team, and Naoki and Yuriko were put on their own two-man team, because of their political status. Yuriko did not stop squealing with joy. Naruto had almost fallen asleep when he heard his name. Team 33, which focuses on assassination, will be made up of Sho Isamu, Ni Yugito, and Uzumaki Naruto. You will meet your sensei at Training Ground 16. Naruto shot Yugito thumbs up, to which she replied with a grin. He then looked over at his other teammate, Isamu Sho. He wore a black sweatshirt with gray ninja pants, and his Hittite sewn onto his right shoulder. His black hair and pale skin made him blend into the crowd of students. Isamu had a bored expression on his face, but his hazel eyes darted around the room, analyzing everything. The kid had done average in everything, but Naruto knew he was faking it. The Sho family made up a large percentage of the villages. Isamu was kind, level-headed, and very smart. He had proved that when he had come up with a fail-safe way to steal the test answers last semester. Yes, he would be a good person to have on the team. After Osamu released the class, Naruto, Yugito, and Isamu began walking to Training Ground 16. They walked in a pleasant silence as Naruto continued to look over his team. Yugito had begun to grow a figure, but it was only slight, and had placed her Kumo Hittite around her waist like a belt. Due to Raki's instructions, Naruto had hidden all of his strongest techniques. He walked around with his swords hidden in a storage seal on his palms. Without them he kind of felt. He had adorned his Hittite loosely around his neck. When the group arrived they noticed a tall, dark-toned man waiting for them. He had white hair that covered his left eye, and wore the standard Kumo Jonin attire, with a high collar. He carried a small broadsword on his back and had the kanji for water and lightning tattooed on each arm. Ah, you are here, that's good. Things were beginning to get dull. He motioned them over to where he was and told them to sit down. All right, I guess I will begin, he said as he looked over his students. My name is Darui. My likes are relaxing, cocky, and nothing breaking. My dislikes are people who are arrogant. And my dream for the future is to serve the raikage. He then motioned to Sho, who looked at the ground then back up to the group. My name is Sho Isamu, he said blandly. My likes are training and family. I don't really dislike anything except for those who try to harm my family. And my dream for the future is to be a respected clan head. Darui nodded, then pointed at Yugito. Okay, now you're up, Purple, he said lazily. Yugito gave a grin. My name is Ni Yugito. My likes are sushi, friends, pranks, and training. My dislikes are arrogant bastards who act like they are better than everyone else, and that sushi goes bad if you leave it out for a while. My dream is to be a powerful protector of Kumo, she said. Darui gave a small smile, and then moved over to Naruto. All right, and blonde number 2, he said. Naruto shrugged. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. My likes are ramen, my precious people, training, and pranks. My dislikes are people who treat others badly for something out of their control, and the 3 minutes it takes to make ramen. My dream is to protect Kumo and my precious people, he finished with an eye smile. Darui gave another smile at Naruto. But then Isamu interrupted with something. I am afraid you are forgetting something, Naruto-san, he said lazily. Naruto rose an eyebrow at him, and that is? He asked. Isamu sighed. You haven't shown anyone your face. If we were on a mission and someone was impersonating you, it could be a failsafe to ensure it was really you, he explained. Oh, Naruto said as he paled a bit, so that means I have to show you all right now. Isamu and Darui nodded. It does sound like the best option. And also everyone on the team knowing what you look like under your mask would ensure team bonding, Darui added. Yugito was now bouncing with joy and anticipation. This is it, Nibi. All of our hard work will finally pay off. She thought to her charge. I know kitten, I can hardly wait. End of all the days not to bring a camera. Said Nibi, who was looking at Naruto intently. So what are you waiting for? Take off that mask and show the world. Yelled Yugito, getting in closer to have a better view. Naruto narrowed his eyes a bit. You are enjoying this, aren't you? He asked, to which Yugito grinned and nodded. Seeing that he was not getting out of this, he sighed. All right, fine, he said and begun to remove his mask. When he took it off, Darui shrugged. Whisker marks, who knew, he said. Isamu looked confused. Why would you want to hide your face? I see nothing wrong with he stopped when he saw Yugito looking slack-jawed at Naruto. There was a 3-second pause before she disappeared and reappeared right next to Naruto, glomping the life out of him. Kawaii. These are adorable. Why didn't you let me see them earlier? Inside her, Nibi was doing no better. I knew we had hit the jackpot with this kid. Understanding, kind, and now we can add on hot. When you are done choking him, drag him back to your room and tie him up. So we can see his whiskers every day. She yelled from her cage. When Darui finally managed to pry Yugito away from Naruto, Isamu spoke up. I now understand why you wore a mask. Naruto just nodded at him, trying to regain his breath. After Naruto had replaced his mask, Darui continued. Alright, continuing on from where we got off track, training ground 16 will be where we will do missions from 9 to 12, then training exercises until 6. Team 33 nodded. Alright. Darui added. Now I want all of you to go home and rest up for Tomer. He was interrupted by a puff of smoke. As the smoke cleared, it revealed Raki, the Kitsune Sennin. Kit, he yelled, before running up and grabbing Naruto. I just heard that the bastard Takashi and Chiasa used their political influence to get their 2 brats on a 2-man squad. Do you know what that means? Emphasizing each word with a shake. Meanwhile, Yugito was slack-jawed, and Isamu and Darui were wide-eyed. Raki-sama, what are you doing here? Asked Darui, who was still confused about why one of the legendary Sennin of Kumo was shaking his student. Raki turned his head to Darui. Oh, I didn't know you would still be here, he said, voicing his surprise. He then turned to Yugito. You're the kid who humiliated Takashi Thames and Chiasa's apprentice, right? He asked. Yugito shyly nodded her head. Raki stared at Yugito for a moment, before he nodded. Nice job, he said, before turning back to Naruto. Well now, Kit, looks like you blew my cover, said Raki, who shook his head. I am so disappointed. Regaining his balance, Naruto glared at Raki. What do you mean I blew it? You were the one who randomly appeared here, and started yelling about it, Ero Masuda. Raki glared at his student. I told you to stop calling me that, and I think we are forgetting who is at fault here, he continued. Yeah, you, yelled Naruto. Yugito, Isamu, and Darui were completely confused with what had happened in the last couple of minutes. Raki, one of the Sennin, had arrived and started yelling at Naruto, who was yelling back with equal vigor, even going so far as to call him, Ero Masuda. Alright, can someone please explain what is going on? Yugito asked as she pinched the bridge of her nose. Raki turned to her. Well, that could easily be explained by Naruto, he said as he pushed his apprentice forward. Well, you see, remember when you said that only the Ukami and Neko Sennin had apprentices? You were kind of wrong, Naruto stuttered as he rubbed the back of his neck, eyes frantically darted around the training ground, looking for a place to hide if need be. Yugito's eyes widened with realization. You are the Kitsune Sennin's apprentice, she said quietly. Naruto nodded. Since I was 6, he added. There was silence for a few moments before Yugito punched Naruto square in the face. He was knocked to the ground, and looked up in fear of seeing Yugito in rage. You knew all this time and didn't tell me. She yelled as tried to smash his face again. Naruto rolled out of the way and started to back away. Now Yugi-chan, listen, he said as he raised his hands in surrender. I don't want to listen. She yelled, and took out a couple of kunai and aimed them at his neck. Naruto and hid behind a training post. Please have mercy, he said meekly. Yugito smiled darkly. Sorry, all out, and proceeded to chase Naruto around the grounds with a variety of sharp and heavy OBJ. ECTS. From the sidelines, Isamu was shaking his head at his teammates. Well, at least there will never be a dull moment, he said, as he watched Yugito using Naruto as a punching bag. Raki looked at the boy curiously. You don't seem that surprised, he said. Isamu just shrugged. I always knew Naruto was a bit different. If you told me now that he was the Raikage's long-lost son, I could see it, he said as he took a seat on the dirt. Darui then looked at Raki. Since he is an apprentice, he said with his eyebrow raised, what can he do? Raki just smirked at him. Now where would be the fun in that? I'll give you some hints, but the rest you will have to find out. He can summon, is skilled at a complex shinobi art, and has something similar to your Kuroi Kaminara, but the rest you will have to get from him. Darui's visible eye rose a bit on the last hint, but he kept his mouth shut. Raki then turned to the scuttle happening between Naruto and Yugito. Hey Kit, when you are done playing with your girlfriend, tell them the complications of knowing this secret, he yelled, only to have to dodge a swarm of shuriken. Oh, she has a temper. This is going to be fun for you, Darui, he said with a grin, before using the shunshin, and disappearing. After Yugito was through with Naruto, he explained why he and Raki had kept his apprenticeship a secret, going into how he had traveled with Raki since he was 6, and had not stayed in a place for more than a month. When he was finished, Isamu was the first to accept it, later by a reluctant Yugito, who said that Naruto would owe her a lot of sushi in the future. Darui watched the scene in pride, seeing how early on his team was building bonds with each other. I think that this not going to be as dull as I thought, said Darui quietly to himself. But with a two-tailed Jinchuriki, a ramen-loving Sennin in training, and a trained assassin, when would it be peaceful in the village again? He then told the group to meet him here at 9 o'clock the next morning to start missions. When Naruto got home that night, he was beat. Most of the wounds Yugito had inflicted were healed, but were still sore. He winced as he fell into his bed. Kit, that was the most entertaining thing I have seen in a long time, said Kyubi from his cage. Seeing you get your whooped by that cat's container was funny as shit. Quote. And why are you laughing? Naruto thought back. Last time I checked, you felt what I felt, so why aren't you hurting? The fox snorted from his cage. Kit, you getting hurt is minuscule to what I think pain is, so it doesn't bother me. You getting punched in the stomach by a female's rage feels like a bug bite to me, explained the Kyubi. Naruto was about to make a comeback, but froze when he sensed a presence at the door. He looked over and saw Yugito standing there with a scowl on her face. You didn't tell me everything, she said, as she walked closer. Raki wouldn't have just picked anyone to teach, there had to be some reason he picked you. Yugito was now standing right in front of him, glaring directly into his eyes. It could be family, but Raki never saw that as extremely I am important. So that is out, she continued to list off. If you had a bloodline that would make sense, but that would also mean a lot of political trouble getting you here. So tell me, why? Naruto looked away from her. You don't want to know that, he said quietly. Trust me, this is something that you do not want to hear. Bullshit, Yugito said, her voice getting a bit louder. We are on a team Baka. If I don't know something that could be a threat, you are not only putting me at risk, but Samui, Omoi, Karui, Raki, and the entire village. So I will ask again, why? Naruto looked down at the ground, the bangs of his hair creating a shadow over his eyes. There was silence for a minute before he spoke. You don't know how lucky you have it, he said curtly. Yugito raised an eyebrow. What is that supposed to mean? She asked. Naruto said again, only louder, I said you don't know how lucky you have it. I have seen the way people look at you, some glare, some scowl, but that is it. You do not know how bad it is for people like us outside of Kumo. People like us. What is that supposed to mean? Yugito stopped right there as shock and realization formed on her face. Your age in Cherokee, she said, barely above a whisper. Naruto nodded, and when he looked up, Yugito took a step back in shock. His normal bright, sapphire, blue eyes, which she thought was one of his best qualities, were dull, and expressed powerful feelings of fear, anger, loneliness, and above all, pain. I was born on October 10th, in the village of Konoha, he started, gathering Yugito's attention. On that night, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked our village, killing hundreds of people, shinobi and civilian alike. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, the Yondaime Hokage used his last resort, the Shiki Fuin, to use the Shinigami to seal half of the beast within himself, and the other half inside a newborn baby. Yugito was paying rapt attention now, silently dreading the words to come. The reason the Shiki Fuin is considered a last resort, is because it takes the soul of the wielder as payment, continued Naruto, not a speck of emotion in his voice. The Yondaime's last wish was for me to be treated as arrow, but I guess he gave the villagers too much credit. Tears were beginning to fall down Naruto's face as he recounted his life. The council demanded my death immediately after they were informed, but thanks to the help of Sandame, I survived. But that did not mean that the council and the villagers wouldn't make my life a living hell. They placed me in an orphanage, where I was forced to sleep in the cold and wet basement, and was only fed once a week, and even then they were table scraps that I had to eat in a corner. When I got old enough to talk, I asked why and they would reply, demons don't deserve to eat people food, and would slap me in the face. Yugito listened in horror as Naruto told her his past. The children were encouraged to pick on me, and beat me up, and if I tried to defend myself, I would be punished severely, Naruto said, as he subconsciously squeezed his pants. When I turned 4, the orphanage kicked me out onto the streets, where I had to dig through the garbage for a meal, and if I was lucky, a small ramen shop would give me a bowl on the house. However, during those times, the mob started. They would hunt me down, and beat me to an inch of death, before the Anbu would come to disperse the crowd, and then leave as quickly as they had come. I was left to heal myself most of the time. Sometimes an Inu-faced Anbu would take me to the hospital, but it was always a 50-50 chance if I would get treated or not. That was the case, when on my birthday, I was beaten so badly that I was in a coma for about 2 days. When I awoke to find the Sandame watching me, I told him about my life on the streets, and he was furious. He then gave me my own apartment, which I lived in for barely a year. Yugito was both disgusted and horrified with what these monsters had done to a child, and deeply wanted to make them pay. On my 6th birthday, I was hiding out in my apartment. I had learned early on that on my birthday, the beatings were the worst, said Naruto, who was looking at the floor again, slightly shivering. It was then when a mob broke into my house, chased me into a dark alley, and proceeded to give me the worst beating of my life. Naruto looked to stare right at Yugito. I was stabbed, cut, my ribs were broken, and to top it all off, some ninja in the group used some Kaden jutsus on me, giving me second-degree burns all over my body. I was then moved out of the village, and crucified to a stake in the middle of the forest, left to die. Finally a small smile graced Naruto's lips. That was when I met Raki. He had been traveling through the outskirts of Konoha, and had smelled my blood. He took me away from the village and offered to teach me. I accepted, because he told me the reason I was hated, and I was unsure if I wanted to protect those people. he finished and then gave a dry chuckle. I am sorry, I am sure you didn't want to know that. In an instant Yugito was pulling him into a hug, and was sobbing her eyes out. Naruto was confused, but slowly relaxed into it. They stayed like that for a while. Naruto didn't know, he just stayed there, silent, waiting for Yugito to finish. When she did look up, her eyes were puffy red. How can you still smile, with everything that has happened to you? She asked. She had never seen Naruto with less than a smile on his face, and had never seen him cry. Naruto gave her a smile. I never gave up, he said simply. I would never let their words get to me, and if they did, I always had a friend nearby to knock me on the head to get my senses back together. He then looked up at the ceiling. To tell you the truth, I have never told anyone this in that detail. I always kept the worst parts to myself, so no one would have to pity me. But with you, it was different. Yugito gave a dry laugh and whipped the tears from her eyes. That's because we are friends, Baka, and them hurting you is just like them hurting me, she said as she put her hand in front of him. If you ever see one of those bastards again, I will be there to help you kick their back to hell. What do you say? Naruto gave her a foxy grin. Great, Yugi-chan, great, he said as he grabbed the offered hand. Yugito grinned back, and walked to the door. I'll see you tomorrow for missions, she said with a wave. Yugito, Naruto said, making her turn back to see a serious expression on his face. This is considered an SS-ranked secret, so you cannot tell anybody about it. Understand? Yugito nodded, and exited the apartment. A smile played on Naruto's lips. Thanks for understanding, Yugi-chan, he said to himself, before he let exhausted but blissful sleep claim him. Yugito had just entered her apartment when she heard a feminine yawn coming from her head. Her apartment was very similar to Naruto's, except it had more pictures around the place, was a bit dirtier, and the smell of fish was ever present. You were sleeping the whole time? She asked the cat demon, which was doing some stretches. Of course, kitten, said Nibby, you went to hurt the blonde, and I had already seen that this morning. So there was no real need for me to watch. Yugito sighed. Well, I didn't kick his. He had a perfectly good reason for not telling anybody, she thought as she prepared for bed. Oh, and what might that be? Nibby said, getting interested. He's a Jinchuriki like me, said Yugito as she walked out of the bathroom. Oh, well, that makes sense. He did always heal from injuries fast, and he has that ungodly stamina, but who does he contain? Ikibi. He is a little coward who won't let anyone near his container. Me. That's obvious. The Sanbi doesn't really do well with heights. Yonbi. Maybe. Gobi. So polite that you would rip your own ears off, so no. Rokubi. Iu. Nanabi. Such a bitch, I would like to claw her eyes out. Were any of these on target? Yugito shook her head. Nope, all wrong. He contains the Kyuubi no Yoko, she said, but was not expecting the reaction from her container. Q-kun is here, she yelled, causing Yugito to jump. What are you waiting for, kitten? Go and claim him right now. I have waited far too long to be denied him when he is so close. Yugito sighed. Good night, Nibby, she thought and laid in her bed. What are you doing, kitten? You should not be sleeping, that should be exactly the opposite of what you should be doing tonight. Go back into his room, and claim him. Get down on your knees and suck his. Yugito shut her connection to Nibby, and enjoyed the blisses of sleep, while Nibby ranted a boo. The stuff she should be.